Thank you for braving the floods and turning up. Much appreciated. Welcome to this meeting of the Western and Southern Area Planning Committee, Thursday, the 29th of January, 2026. For the benefit of the public attending today or watching on the live stream, I'm Councillor Bolwell, Chair of this committee. Vice Chair is Councillor Neil Lysen. The meeting is being live streamed and will be available to view on the Council website after the meeting. By attending this meeting, you consent to being filmed. Can I remind everyone that when you are speaking, please speak. You don't need to do this bit. You don't need to speak directly into the microphones because we've moved rooms, so you can be clearly heard anyway. So bear that in mind. You can be heard even if you don't think you are being heard. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public is invited. All attendees must comply with the ruling of the Chair. They must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch off your mobile phones or select silent mode for the duration of the meeting. Those using Teams, please ensure microphones are on mute and your device volume is set to 0 to maintain audio quality. Only those who have registered to speak in accordance with the speaking protocol will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. That will be limited to the first 3 people objecting to and the first 3 people supporting the application who have registered along with the Parish Council and Ward member. No materials to be circulated to members of the committee. We have 5 applications to determine today as applications P/FUL/2025/01316 and P/LBC/2025/01317, which are items 10 and 11 on the agenda, have been withdrawn. The case officer will be invited to present the report and recommendations. Next, I will invite members of the public who have registered to speak with the Democratic Services Officer before the deadline to address the committee in the following order: public against, public support, applicant/agent, town or parish council, and ward members. Each speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes. Following on from the registered public speakers, the planning officers will have the opportunity to address any salient points they wish to clarify. Committee members will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the planning officers before moving on to their debate. When we go into councillor questions and debate, for the benefit of the public watching, the members please state their name and ward when addressing the meeting. I will now conduct a roll call of members present. Myself, Councillor David Bolwell, Councillor Neil Lysen is here, Councillor Belinda Borden, Councillor Matt Bell. Thank you, Matt. Councillor Simon Christopher.
Present and totally correct.
Morning, Simon. Councillor Paul Kimber.
Yes, Chair.
Morning, Paul. Councillor Craig Monks.
Morning, Chair.
Morning, Craig. Councillor David Northam.
Morning.
Morning, David. Councillor Louis O'Leary.
Good morning, Chairman.
Morning, Louis. Councillor Pete Roper.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning, Pete. Councillor David Cortell, just
about. Good morning, Chairman.
Thank you, David, and thank you for making the effort to get here. I believe Councillor Kate Weller is going to do a minute. Roll call and introductions. Officers involved in today's meeting include Anne Collins, Development Manager, Area Manager. Morning, Anne.
Okay.
Hannah Massey, Lawyer. Morning, Hannah. James Litton-Trevis, Lead Project Officer. Good morning, James.
Good morning.
Steve Tapscott, Senior Planning Officer. Good morning, Steve. He is here in the corner. Robert Parr, Planning Officer. Good morning, Robert. Okay, so he's not with us at the moment. Eve van der Steen, Senior Conservation and Design Officer. Good morning, Eve. Alison Curtis, Development Team Leader. Good morning, Alison.
Good morning, Chair.
Josh Kennedy, Democratic Services Officer. Good morning, Josh.
Morning.
And Louis Wicks, Democratic Services Officer Apprentice. Right, moving on to the agenda. Apologies. Josh, can you, apologies do we have? I think
So apologies today from Councillor Belinda Borden, Councillor Kate Weller.
Thank you.
Chairman, just to say I'm attending remotely to protect you all from my nasty cough.
Oh. I'm wrong.
bothered.
We've all got one anyway, I think, but
Okay.
thank you very much, Belinda, for that. declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations of interest you wish to make on any of the items on the agenda? No? Okay. I have, on this particular item, I'd like to make a statement. As I'm a Bridport Town and Dorset Ward Councillor for Bridport, I've clarified my position regarding taking part in agenda item 5. I've discussed this with our legal team, as I've not made any comments on this application other than correcting inaccuracies, and I confirm I will approach this item with an open mind and not predetermination, and I've had the all clear to continue in my role as chair and committee member. You just note that. Thank you very much, Josh. Right, we will now move to item 3 on the agenda, minutes. Members, can I ask if you can agree and sign the minutes are accurate of the meeting held on Thursday, the 11th of December 2025. Yep. Everybody happy with that? I'll sign them at the end of the meeting. Thank you. Public participation. Members of the public registered to speak can be given the opportunity to speak now if they wish, or wait for their item to be presented. Does anybody wish to speak now, or are you happy to wait for your items? Everybody seems to be happy. Okay, planning applications. First item on the agenda is item 5, which is P/MPO/2025/06054. Land at Verse Farm, in brackets Foundry Lee, Bridport, DT6 5JT. It's presented by James Litton Trevis. We have 4 speakers. First to speak, we have an objector, which is Barry Bates. Would you like to take the chair, Barry? And sorry. Oh, sorry. Sorry, James has got to do his presentation first. I'm not in that much of a hurry, but I'm trying to get through. James, sorry, the fact that you're around the corner probably, wouldn't stare me in the eyes. So would you like to do your presentation first, James? Thanks.
Good morning. The application is to modify a planning obligation relating to an existing planning permission. I'll read this out. The existing permission with outline application for the development of up to 760 houses, 60-unit care home, 4 hectares, and for employment, mixed-use local centre, and primary school playing fields, areas of public open space and allotments, drainage works, the formation of a new vehicle access to West Road, and the formation of new pedestrian and cycle links. And the application is to modify the application of, in terms of the occupation of dwelling restriction regarding completion of Miles Cross Junction works. This is the site outlined in red, and the application specifically relates to the proposed Miles Cross roundabout, which is on the western side of this site, the junction between West Road and the A35. And this is a draft rendition of the proposed roundabout, which would be formed to improve the junction that currently exists. So the main issues are relating to what's before us, and the application isn't like normal planning applications. There's already planning permission in outline to develop the land. When that permission was granted, it was subject to a number of conditions, some of which have been met and some which haven't, but yet to be, and also a legal or Section 106 agreement. And it was considered necessary in granting outline permission that before any of the 760 dwellings are occupied, that improvements would be made to the junction between the A35 and West Road. And that was stipulated in the planning permission by condition and by legal agreement that none of the dwellings would be occupied until that junction improvement was completed. The junction improvement deemed necessary transpired to be a roundabout in this case, and details of that have been submitted to National Highways, and behind the scenes, that is almost at a point where agreement's been reached for legal agreement, the Section 278 agreement, for works to commence on that roundabout construction. But obviously, currently the site is being developed. A number of houses are ready for occupation, and we have a scenario where the applicant is unable to have houses occupied because this legal restriction prevents them from so doing until the roundabout's completed. And obviously, the roundabout hasn't started work yet. I should point out the applicant is not trying to avoid building a roundabout. They are fully prepared to build the roundabout. The application seeks some variation to that legal agreement to allow some of the houses to be occupied before the roundabout is completed. The reason for the junction improvement was principally about highway safety. It was considered necessary at the time that because the existing junction, which is well designed indeed, wouldn't be sufficient to cope with the additional 760 houses. So that was why the restriction was placed on the outline plan permission within the legal agreement and within the conditions on permission. The main consultees with regard to highway safety are National Highways and Dorset Highways. Now, the greater proportion of land that is affected by this proposal, I'll just go back to the roundabout, the greater proportion of land that's affected by this proposal falls within the A35, which is a trunk road, and it's National Highways jurisdiction, not Dorset Highways jurisdiction. So the lion's share, shall we say, all of this and all of this would be under National Highways, and they are the main consultee, the statutory consultee with respect to highway safety on matters such as this. A smaller part, West Road, which is a B road, falls within Dorset Highways. So both consultees have been involved in it, and have both consultees, National Highways and Dorset Highways, considered the highway safety implications of the application, and consider that 109 dwellings could be occupied before completion of the work. Only 109 though. So the current wording of the legal agreement is the top paragraph, not to permit the occupation of any dwelling until the provisional completion of the Mars Cross Junction works. That's the actual wording in the legal agreement. And what's proposed with this application is not to permit the occupation of more than 109 dwellings until the provisional completion of the Mars Cross Junction works. That 109 is derived from this, and this table shows BDW, which is Barrett's, and VG, which is Vistry, the two house builders, shows the number of dwellings that are proposed to be completed this year for sale, i.e. available for occupation. And it shows that of the 109, 23 would be Barrett's open market, 10 would be Vistry open market, 76 of Vistry would be affordable. So a large contingent of that 109 would be affordable dwellings, which, were we not to approve this, would obviously be delayed. They wouldn't be able to be occupied until the roundabout was completed. So in consideration of highway safety, which is the main issue, where National Highways raised no objection to 109 dwellings being occupied, Dorset Highways similarly, do not object to 109 dwellings being occupied before completion of the roundabout. The recommendation is to approve the variation to the legal agreement. Specifically, it would be a legal agreement to have that wording, which I already pointed out to you. I'll read it again. Amendment to the wording of Schedule 3, Part 16, paragraph 17.2, to read, not to permit the occupation of more than 109 dwellings until the completion of the Miles Cross Junction works. Chairman, that concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much, James, on that one. We will now move to the public speakers. So Barry Bates, please, if you'd like to start. Thank you. You have 3 minutes, Barry. We'll give you the heads up at 2 minutes 30. And I may cut you off dead in 3 minutes, or I may allow a little bit over. See. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and thank you to the councillors for bringing this to committee. I think you are the advocates of the local community on these. I'm speaking on behalf of Adverse, that continues to monitor the development on this site, and also to reflect the concerns of many local people that this roundabout will possibly never be built. But I also recognise that the news that the potential developer, contractor, has gone into administration will inevitably colour what we're thinking about today. It's a difficult situation for you as councillors. But let's be clear why we're here today. Firstly, I believe any other council in the country would have insisted that this roundabout be completed before any construction started on site. And I think officers have failed to respond to warnings from ourselves and the report news that they were crashing ahead with these houses without doing the level of effort into securing a contractor to start the roundabout. However, looking ahead from where we are today, I think it's worth saying it's in nobody's interest for the site to be left as it currently is. Bridport undoubtedly needs more social housing, and the roundabout needs to be built. Now, there is an argument that you as a council should stick to the legal agreement. That would, in fact, focus the minds of the developers on completing this roundabout as fast as possible. However, should you agree to the amendment, and we would understand that, I think there must really be a binding commitment that no more than the 109 will be allowed. For those councillors who don't know this roundabout, you'll have seen it on the map there. It will be the main access onto this estate for those people living there. And it's already a difficult junction. And this is a massive development. It will add about 15% to the population of Bridport. So progressively, if you go beyond the 109, there will be increasing safety concerns. Now, the paper before you says that the behaviour of the developers is not a material consideration. That may be true for the planners. For you as councillors, I would ask, can you trust the developers who've got us to the situation today?
30 seconds, Barry.
Sorry?
30 seconds.
The developers, I think, have pressed ahead as they've done. Bear in mind the MP is concerned about this, and I think we can predict there will be further requests as this roundabout is inevitably now delayed. And I think you need to say enough is enough, no more than 109. And I would ask, therefore, that you consider that, and from here on in, the rest of this legal agreement is better monitored than the roundabout has been so far.
Thank you, Barry. You've gone over 3 minutes, so I'll allow a little bit of latitude for the other speakers as well.
Thank you.
Next, we have speaking in support, Ralph Hawkins.
Good morning to you all, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you about this application. My name is Ralph Hawkins, and I am the Managing Director of Barrett David Wilson Southwest Division, that along with our consortium partner Vistry is delivering the Foundry Lee development. I want to focus on the planning and delivery context for the application before you. Firstly, I want to make it very clear that this proposal is not about removing infrastructure, reducing obligations, or revisiting the principle of development. The Miles Cross roundabout remains fully secured, fully funded, and fully required. The sole issue for members today is whether a limited and controlled change to the occupation trigger is acceptable in planning terms. Your officers are clear that it is. Both National Highways and Dorset Council's highway officers raised no objections to allowing occupation of up to 109 dwellings ahead of completion of the roundabout. Crucially, officers conclude that this would not present a danger to road users and that the proposal accords with the development plan and the National Planning Policy Framework. We were due to commence the Miles Cross roundabout works in February. However, members may be aware that progress on the Miles Cross roundabout has recently been affected by the collapse into administration of the National Highways approved contractor originally appointed to deliver the scheme. This was an incredibly unfortunate and unforeseen event and entirely outside the control of both ourselves and Vistry. What matters is how that situation is being addressed. We are working closely with National Highways and Dorset Council to secure a replacement contractor and maintain momentum. We are currently in discussions with an alternative National Highways approved contractor to deliver the Miles Cross roundabout works. The Section 278 process remains live. The design is agreed, and there is a shared commitment to progressing the works as quickly and responsibly as possible, and we are working swiftly to ensure any delay is kept to a minimum. This application now ensures that an external commercial failure does not have the unintended consequences of bringing the entire development to a halt, particularly where officers are satisfied that a limited level of occupation causes no material harm.
30 seconds.
Importantly, the variation before you is precise and enforceable. It allows no more than 109 occupations, and no further homes can be occupied until the Miles Cross roundabout works to reach provisional completion. The safeguard remains firmly in place. We therefore respectfully ask members to endorse the officer recommendation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ralph. Would you just bear with me a minute? I just need to check something. I have to make sure that the rules of speakers are observed, and you were just down as support on my paperwork, which could have been a member of the public. So hence I was just querying the company that you're actually working for. I'm prepared to allow that one at the moment, as you've actually just done it. So we now have the applicant, please, which is Ben Winchester, to speak. Ben, you've got 3 minutes, and I'll give you a heads up at 2 minutes 30 again. So it will be slightly flexible on the finish time. Okay, when you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, all members of the committee and chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today regarding our proposals to vary the existing Section 106 agreement for Foundry Lead Development, which we are delivering in partnership with Barrett David Wilson. My name is Ben Winchester, Technical Director at Vistry. This morning, I'd like to focus on the application, what it means for the people of Bridport, particularly those in need of affordable homes, and the continued local investment and jobs this development brings to Bridport. At Vistry, we're committed to delivering a minimum 50% affordable homes on all our developments, whether through additionality, fully funded contracted schemes, or joint venture partners with registered providers. It is a responsibility we take seriously, and we aim to be positive and a valued member and partner for every community that we work with. The proposal before you today is a modest and carefully considered change. It does not remove the proposals for Miles Cross roundabout, which has been the subject of many local residents' concerns. It simply allows up to 109 units to be, or homes to be occupied while the work is completed. Of the 109 dwellings, 76 are affordable homes, as seen, more than 69 of the total, reflecting our ongoing commitment to deliver additional affordable housing. So these are not future aspirations. These are contracted homes with land already transferred to Abri and Magna, ready to be lived in by local families, key workers and residents who are currently struggling to find a home they can afford. Delaying this variation does not just delay construction, but also delays people moving into secure homes in a town where the need for affordable housing is well recognised, including by the Port Town Council. Maintaining momentum is also essential for jobs in the local economy. Foundry supports construction employment, local contractors and supply chains, skills opportunities already seen on site. Continued progress provides a certainty for workers and ensures continued investment in the Bridport. On highways, the position is clear and proportionate. National Highways and Dorset Highways raise no objection. The officers conclude that allowing 109 homes would not lead to danger to road users. The roundabout remains fully secured. This is about timing, not safety. In short, this proposal enables affordable homes to be lived in now, supports local jobs and does so without causing material harm.
30 seconds.
We therefore respectfully ask members to support the officer recommendation under option A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. Oh, you were actually very- Paul Hartman, please. Paul is speaking on behalf of Symonsbury Parish Council.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Hartman. I'm Chair of Symonsbury Parish Council. Until recently, I was a Director of the House of Lords Strategic Property Board. The application is made to amend as a non-material the conditions 24 and 25 of the legal agreement to allow 335 houses originally to be occupied, now reduced by negotiation to 109 houses. It is relevant to note that there is no statutory definition of non-material, and the local planning authority must be satisfied that the amendment sought is non-material to grant the application. It is clear the original conditions and 106 obligations restricting residential occupancy until after the completion of the junction improvements were important enough to be formulated as such. It is also important to note that the conditions and 106 are there to protect and assure there is no detrimental effect on or harm to the area, the town, the local residents and the travelling public during construction. Despite the suggestions made by the applicant that clauses are non-material due to them being included as a concession to local residences, businesses and pressure groups, nothing has altered to suggest a change to the importance of the conditions. In fact, the occupation of dwellings does increase the risk of public harm and safety. As such, the conditions are clearly material, reinforced by the legal agreement and made by Dorset Council, who must have regard to the detrimental effects of this proposed change, which are fundamental and substantial. The early improvement to the Miles Cross Junction without occupations was to provide a safe access to the site, safety of residents and travelling public during the construction of the development, as well as improved safety upon completion. There's no clear and real trigger as to what a meaningful start or completion to the junction works is, which must be clearly addressed by Dorset Council. This issue is also currently affected by the possibility of one of the junction works contractors entering liquidation, and there's a danger that the development will not be substantially completed without a junction improvement. It is felt there's no real commitment on behalf of the developers to deliver their agreed obligations, which they have had ample time to date to do. Further, it is felt that they were using the availability of affordable housing units in an attempt to sway the decision to allow occupation, which is a commercial decision and not a planning matter. The obligation change in the section 106 relevant to the condition change is unacceptable in planning terms. It also has to be amended by deed of variation with agreement by all signatories, which in itself will take some time.
30 seconds. Paul.
The benefit of occupation of houses, even noting the considerable need of locally, is not acceptable compared to the risk for which the original conditions and 106 were engaged. In summary, the submission does not provide sufficient justification for the variation of conditions 24 and 25 or the legal agreement, and is a material, fundamental and substantial amendment. Notwithstanding the need of affordable housing in the Bridport, the delay of occupation of houses, whatever number, does not justify the change to the planning and legal agreement and provides an increased detrimental risk during the construction of the development. Symonsbury Parish Council objects to the application.
I've finished, have you?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Couple of seconds there. Can you just, before we go to James, have a quick word with Hannah, please? James, would you like to come back on any of the points that were raised by the speakers and some clarification on the NMA being an NMA? I think we have discussed this before when it first came in, and I think James. I will be asking for clarification on that. Thank you.
Yes, I was about to explain that.
Thank you.
It's actually in the report. So when the outline permission was granted, it was granted subject to a whole raft of conditions and legal agreement. There was in effect, a double-edged sword here, possibly questionable whether it was needed, but there was a condition requiring completion of the Mars Cross roundabout and the legal agreement. So two sort of ways of achieving it, the same thing in effect. So a condition, I think it was condition 24, is in the report, and the legal agreement. There is an application, if you like, to vary that condition in line with the legal agreement. So the legal agreement takes precedence, and the application for today, there is also a tandem application for a non-material amendment to change that condition to read 109, like the legal agreement. Same thing. It is normal practice for such an application to be dealt with as a non-material amendment, as we call it, or a 96A application under the Town and Country Planning Act. And if permission today were granted to vary the section 106, then obviously subject to the legal agreement, or deed of variation being written up, which will obviously have to be done, then we would approve the non-material amendment to address the condition change. It's relatively simple, straightforward thing to do. Obviously, we're permitted to refuse the application today, then obviously the application condition be approved either.
Thank you. I think I followed that, James. Any other points that you'd like to respond to from the speakers have made?
Not me, no.
No. Okay. Members of the committee, you now have the opportunity to question things on any salient points you may have regarding the technicalities of this presentation. So please don't be shy and put your hands up. Councillor Northern first, please.
David Northern, Upway and Broadway Ward. I'd like to ask a few questions relating to some of the background to this to help my understanding. The conditions referred not only to the Miles Cross roundabout, but also to pedestrian and cycle improvements. And I wondered whether those had happened yet or were part and parcel of the same thing. The second one was, to me, it seems, I don't understand what has caused the delay to the roundabout being built. I understand the delay to starting it is from the contractor from National Highways effectively no longer able to deliver. But that is still quite a long while since the application was approved. The condition was set in 2019, so we're 6 years, 7 years on from there. It seems a long time to have not done this. So that's the question is, what has caused the delay? And the last bit is, how long will it actually take to, what's in the planning, sorry, in the development planning, what's the period that it will take to actually deliver the Miles Cross junction?
Yeah. I think all of those can be answered. I could probably do it myself, but I'll refer it back to James.
Yes, the roundabout, as you probably gather, is a fairly large proposal. It's not something that can be done overnight. It's projected that it would take 9 months to construct it. I suspect that it would take up to 9 months, but we don't know that. So the provisional scale of a time period proposed is 9 months. You can't simply turn up on a trunk road and start building a roundabout. So you have to get permission from National Highways and a number of other people to do so. And you have to meet all of their construction criteria and so on and so forth. So it is a relatively major undertaking, not something that could be dealt with just overnight. The reason for the delay was dealing with the Section 278 agreement, which is a legal agreement which is to ensure that the road or the roundabout is constructed to appropriate standards and so on and so forth. I dare say my colleague Alison might be able to explain that better than I can. And that was why there has been a delay in construction of the roundabout, because it's a big project, takes a lot of organising, and one reason or another is being delayed, and that's why we have the application before us today. The cycle improvements and so on and so forth referred to, I'm not quite clear. I might have to just go away and check which conditions those are before I can answer that, Chairman. So if you just allow you carry on, maybe.
Yes, thank you, James.
I'll check the history on
I
that.
think the relevance of the question is also concerning me, but yeah. Alison, would you mind, is there anything you'd like to add to the replies from James on the length of time, etc.? I think the window being offered by National Highways was also quite relevant case, isn't it?
Yes, National Highways were able to offer a road space window through to autumn this year, which will hopefully still be met. The programme for this sort of roundabout is 9 months. That's typical for a roundabout development this size. And James has perfectly well explained the 278 agreement, but if anybody has any other questions on it, I can answer them, but I'm not sure it's relevant to this morning.
Okay, thank you, Alison. I hope that's helped a bit, David.
Yeah, the reason for referring to the pedestrian and cycle is that the roundabout would have provided potentially improved crossings towards Bridport and the like, and I'm guessing the pedestrians and cycle improvements was also addressing the same sort of thing. So the 109 people moving in won't have the roundabout crossing. What will they have? Is there anything already provided? That was the reason for the question.
Yeah, from my personal experience, anybody that's on that development won't be using the roundabout to get into Bridport. They will be going along West Road. Okay. So the cycle route into Bridport is that direction, as is the pedestrian access in that direction. So the roundabout has no function for pedestrian use, basically. I hope that. Sorry, am I allowed to say that?
I didn't really understand the question. You've explained that perfectly well. We have designed within the current reserve matters, actually, which follow the outline, all the cycle routes into the town centre and dedicated routes for those. And there are dedicated routes within development. And the chairman is entirely correct. You wouldn't have people going west.
Does that satisfy your question?
So those improvements have been made.
They haven't yet been completed because obviously the development is still going ahead, but they are in line to be. They're in line to be finished, but yes, I take your point. The current or the potential new occupants, there may be a query over there cycle into it. Members, any other technical questions on this one, or in that case, general questions, and you can go to debate if you wish. Are you wishing to speak or a statement even? Oh. So we go with Matt Bell as Simon Christopher, followed by Craig Mounts.
Flurry of hands at the end there. Matt Bell, Radipole Ward. It seems to me that part of our role sitting on this committee is that we listen to the experts. Obviously, the planning has been given for the development itself. Now we're talking about the roundabout issue, and we've got National Highways and Dorset Highways team saying they view this as acceptable. We don't sit here as highways experts. We refer to experts throughout the stages. I completely take the point that there has to be a limit somewhere, and that is obviously crucial. We can't see this as a rolling agenda of adding more and more houses to this number. But given that we've got the expert advice that they view this as workable, as safe, and they are satisfied with that, I feel supportive of this amendment. I'm keen that those houses are put to good use and that people receive those new homes in a town that has demand. So on the basis of the expert advice, on the basis of the housing that is available, and we want to get people in there, furthering their family lives and settling into the area. in my view, we need to go with the expert advice from the highways that this is acceptable and we can move forward.
Thank you very much. Was that proposal at all in there? Or
I'm happy to propose supporting the amendment.
Thank you very much, Matt. For debate, we'd be looking at Councillor Simon Christopher, please.
Okay.
And seeking a seconder at some time as well.
So I'm not willing to second that proposal. What I would say is that I would be happier if the developers had come forward with a plan, just 86 affordable houses. Perhaps I might even be happier if it was 109 houses, but they were all affordable. And I perhaps think that it would not have been unreasonable, given the vagaries of the housing market to this current government, and in circumstances where my experience, when people build affordable houses, funding comes from the HCA, and the houses get built, and you're not subject to the vagaries of the housing market. So I would be much happier with a proposal for 109, which is only a small part of the total affordable housing to be built in due course, at what we all regard as Fears Farm. So I would like to hear from the developers their comments in respect of what I have said, in as much as allowing perhaps 109 affordable houses to come forward and not a mixture with 23 open market value.
Thank you, Councillor Christopher. And that is not permissible, I'm afraid, in this facility. So they've had the chance to speak. You've obviously raised a question and put your point of view over. We do have to deal with the fact that it's 109 and the mixture was as shown on the screen. If you wish to deviate from that, then you've obviously got the right to vote it down. Should it we go to we've got a proposal. If we get it seconded, you have the opportunity then to show your displeasure that way. But we can't enter into discussions with the developer. Councillor Monks, sorry, Councillor Monks, please.
Well, Chair, Councillor Craig, Monks, Bedminster Ward. This is a really difficult one for me, actually, and some might think it shouldn't be, but it sort of following on from my colleague that first spoke. It's difficult because as members of the planning committee, we do rely on the experts, and obviously the policies, the procedures are pretty strict in terms of how we consider applications. So we come to planning and we sort of follow our heads, but then you hear sort of the concerns of local residents and local town and parishes, even the town and the parish council haven't helped because one seems to have objections and the other doesn't. So then you sort of start to be led by your heart, and that's where the kind of complication in planning comes in. And I also think that when we go through the process and we give permission, and we have legal agreements that we put in place, that's kind of the deal that we enter on behalf of our community. So when the a request comes in to sort of change the rules, that makes it difficult too. So talking about amending the roundabout, for some might seem like quite a simple request made with recommendations from the officers, but actually it's quite a difficult one, and I do hear people's concerns around it. So I'll be interested to see if other colleagues can try and persuade me either way. But yeah, this is more difficult than it seems for me, actually.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Northern.
Thank you, David Northern, Upward Broadway. I'd like to second the proposal that's been made to go with the recommendation. The recommendation does have two parts, I notice. The first part is to agree what's been described, and the second part is like a backstop, which is that there's a time limit to go through certain processes that need to be done. Otherwise, it will be refused. I was pleased to hear that there's a window agreed with National Highways, and that the funding is secured for this, and it's just a matter of finding another replacement contractor, and I hope that proceeds, and I hope Dorset Council will be watching that closely. I am quite impressed that of the 109, 76 are affordable and 33 or some number, I can't quite remember, are market. That seems a good thing. And I note that Bridport Council are supportive of the activity taking place. And I agree with Councillor Bell that the highways experts understand the arcane arrangements around this and the safety, and they've said 109. So I would hope that whilst agreeing this, that doesn't set any precedent for a subsequent application, and I'm sure it doesn't. So on that basis, I'm happy to support it. I suggest we might move to a vote.
So you're seconding the proposal?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'll just make a note. We've got Councillor Isank next, my vice chair, who wishes to speak, followed by Councillor Kimball.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Neil, I think Egerton Ward. I just wanted to really back up both what Councillor Bell said and also Councillor Northam. I'm very similarly minded to them in relation to this. It is a really difficult situation. I personally know that junction. I drive it on a reasonably regular basis, and I know that it's dangerous. Or far from ideal is perhaps the best way to put it. And so I have a lot of sympathy with locals in relation to that. And it is disappointing revisiting things. You know, when we come into a legal agreement with a developer, you would hope that that agreement is stood by. However, we aren't highways experts. And I think in relation to Councillor Northam's point about this 109 homes and the proportion of affordable homes within that, I think it speaks to the fact that the developer seems keen to make best efforts in terms of moving forward with a challenging situation that they're facing. I couldn't help noting as well that in relation to the homes, although it's 109, in fact, I think 8 of those are show homes. So it isn't actually the full 109. And in that sense, I'm even more minded to say this shouldn't set a precedent. It doesn't set a precedent. I think personally speaking, I would be deeply disappointed if the developers wanted to come back and start revisiting again. I think there would need to be very good reasons for that. However, as it stands, I don't see that as a councillor I can go back against the views of National Highways. National Highways, I do note as well, they do specifically say that they accept a degree of additional risk to their network. I think I would say, yes, I could see that as well, but I think their argument is that they wouldn't speak against it because there is a balance to that risk. And I think that's their view. And I think as a councillor, I have to go along with the views of the experts on this.
Thank you, Councillor Isank. Councillor Kimber, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Paul Kimber, Portland. Yeah, I should be supporting the recommendation. I do recognise for the people of Symonsbury, this is not a happy situation, and I'm sure all of us feel around the table today feel for what's happening in Symonsbury, given the distraction and the highways. It's not only the roundabout; it's the roads abutting that's going to abut it as well. But on the positive side, 76 starter homes is so important. Like all of us, we're dealing with people that need homes, and very much they need homes now. So I'm supporting the recommendation, and I think possibly all the officers and the various bodies really need a lot of encouragement to sort out what's been probably none of us would have wished to have happened. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kimber. Members, does anybody else wish to speak? Are you happy that you've got sufficient information to make an informed decision? Councillor Monks, please.
Just to come back on the last few comments, sorry.
That's okay, no, please do.
And I fear that part of what I'm about to say is probably actually more of a technical question, but I'm also quite confident it probably can't be answered, but maybe if the chair is willing to allow it to be answered. So the last few comments around the housing mix, I completely agree with, but actually it's made me kind of focus my mind a little bit more on the concern that I actually have underneath this, which is the potential risk of a further amendment and what controls or strengths the recommendation has that would prevent that. And that's what I think is a technical question, but why I also fear that I don't know if there's really an answer, because I think it's really important that when we make an original decision and we have those there's legally binding kind of, contracts, the 106 conditions that we do kind of respect those really. And I'm just worried that whilst I welcome the homes, I equally don't want to see the building site stop, and that's going to be terrible for local communities as well. I haven't necessarily heard enough within that to make me think, well, okay, if we make this amendment, we know there's a solid plan in place, and I just wonder if the recommendation is strong enough, and if there's anything else we could do to make that more binding. Because ultimately, I suppose my technical question is, what's to stop us being here in 6 months' time because the highways authorised developer, roadworks team actually fall through again and something else happens? We could be constantly amending, and let me stop.
Welcome to the joys of planning.
I know. You said it was going to be easy, Chair.
I think we anticipated this question. I'll pass. James, would you like to comment, or Anne? Either of you, I don't mind. Don't fight over it, but.
Obviously, if you agree the amendment today, Section 106 is completed. If they then breach it, i.e. they go to more than 109 occupations, we could open an enforcement case, which then gets lodged on the land charges search. So then when they start trying to sell more houses to people, it would come up there with an open enforcement case, which obviously deters people from necessarily making those purchases. And also because of Section 106, we could do something called serving an injunction upon them to take action. That is kind of the fallback in terms of the enforcement position. There is obviously nothing we could do, though, in terms of them coming back in 6 months' time and stopping them from making another application. Anybody's allowed to make an application at any time, but obviously you're not bound. Your hands wouldn't be bound in a future decision by the decision you make today.
Yes, I think it's sorry, Councillor Chris, the point is, an S106 variation, as both parties agree. And I think that's the important point, whether this particular party agrees with what the other party wants. Simon Christopher.
Yes, Chair, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak again. I do note that the planning obligation was literally a day or so before the inception of Dorset Council and the first election for Dorset Council. And I have to say that the majority of people in the Bridport area and the local parish councils will be appalled at this decision that has been proposed by the Lib Dems here. I think this will be truly shocking, and it is an unsafe decision. Both junctions of the A35 are truly dangerous, and this will just add to the risk.
Thank you, Councillor Christopher. We don't want any political statements in here, please. That was totally unnecessary, regardless of the political persuasion of the members present. Please ignore those comments. Thank you.
You can take out part of it, but what I have said,
I think you
take out the part
what you said is gone on
record,
record.
but I have highlighted the heart.
It's gone on record. Any other members wishing to speak? If not, we'll move to the vote,
I
please.
deplore playing to the echo.
That's another political statement. But I think on that's fair. It's 1-1 now.
Yeah.
So we'll just leave it behind, please. We'll do no more on that. So please move to the vote. The recommendation was on the screen from James, but it's just popped off. Just to remind yourselves of what we're voting for. It's been proposed by Councillor Matt Bell and seconded by Councillor David Northern. So subject. That's the recommendation. It's a change of wording on para 17.2.
Recommendation A and B.
Yeah, recommendations A and B.
Yeah.
So all those in favour of the proposal, please raise your hands. Josh. All those against? Thank you. There's one, and there's nobody saying no. So that was 9-1. Thank you very much, members of the committee. We'll just pause there while members of the public and agents and everybody else in the room. To change over then. Steve, remind the microphones are live so that any conversations will be picked up.
I mean, decision making is lighter and darker shades of grey, isn't it? Generally.
Thank you very much, James. Right, members, the public have left the room and we've changed over our planning officers. So we will now move to item 6 on the agenda, which is P/FUL/2025/05407, which is 5A Surrey Close, Granby Industrial Estate, Chickerell. And I've been reliably informed by Councillor O'Leary that the postcode is actually DT4 9TY rather than DT9. So we'll make that correct. And we have one online speaker, but first we have the presentation by Steve Tapscott. To you, Steve.
Thank you. This over to Teams. Hopefully it works. Good. Okay. Right. Sorry, I'm just going to try and get my laser thing going so that you can see what I'm pointing at. Geez, I can't seem to make that work. Okay, well,
Want a couple of minutes, Steve, just to get your
yeah,
laptop. That's always a problem with committee room one, etc. is changing over planning officers and getting their laptop set up. So we'll just pause for a second there.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
It's as if by magic it's appeared. Right.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Continue, Steve.
Sorry,
That's fine.
Okay, yep, so this is 5A Surrey Close and the Granby. In summary, this is change of use of the land, an existing car park, to site 34 storage containers. And they'd like to do some associated works, including installing an electric gate along the frontage and some security fencing along the frontage as well. They'd like to reconfigure the site, the car park layout, and modify a cycle store. So I'll talk you through each of those aspects in a minute. The next slide. So here's the site location. Oh, apologies. So just get your bearings. To the north here, just out of shot, is the stadium, Weymouth Stadium. And this is the main road right across the top of the Granby. And this building here is the Dorset Echo building. So the site is, you come off the main road through the Granby, turn left, and it's just down here. And as you can see, it's an existing car park. So the reason why it's before committee today is because it's Dorset Council owned land. The site is within the defined development boundary, and it's also part of the safeguarded key employment site of the Granby. It's currently a 0.16 hectare car park, which, looking through the site's planning history, we believe first gained permission about 1986. So for approximately 40 years, it's functioned as car parking. Here's a photo. I'll give you a couple more photos in a minute, but just to pick up on a few things, you'll all obviously be familiar with the Granby. It varies quite a lot in character, but this particular part of the industrial estate is quite different. It's nicely planted. You can see vegetation right along the site frontage here. And just to pick up as well, you can see these other means of enclosure along Surrey Close tend to be quite low key. So that example there is chain link fencing rather than the big thicker means of enclosure you'll see elsewhere. Other views, so the top right one is within the site, looking over towards the east. You can see that the land slopes downwards towards the south, north, apologies. The bottom left picture is a view towards the south. Sorry, I'm getting my internal compass. But the point is that there's a building there. There's no openings or anything like that. This next photo is towards the north of the site, which is a neighbouring building that fronts right onto the car park. And then finally, towards the bottom left is towards the west of the site and the existing site entrance. Again, just picking up on that vegetated character. So just to give you a little bit of context, there has been some negotiation during the course of this application. The top left plan is the original one, which you must disregard, but this is just to give you an idea of how the scheme has evolved. So originally, the red line went around this here, which is an existing building. When the application was first reviewed by me, I didn't find any plans of this building and no information on it from the applicant. So I queried that, and it seems like it wasn't supposed to be in the red line of the application. So that has since been removed. You'll see from the second plan at the bottom right. Another key aspect of the change was over here. You can see, hopefully, just under the red line going along this part of the site, that's where their fencing was going to be. And also just up here, you can see that they wanted it along this bit here, right along the road edge. And when we saw that, bearing in mind the vegetated character I've just been describing, we did have concerns that that fencing would be right in front of it, right on the road edge, and that could be quite intrusive. So we recommended, see down here, they've submitted some plans to enlarge their application red line in this area. And the purpose of that is to put the fencing further back into the site, therefore allowing for some more planting to help mitigate the visual effects of the new fencing. And then they've also moved the fencing slightly further east here, again, to take advantage of that planting and help screen that new fence. So what we've got before us today is for 23 20-foot containers, and they would be along the southern edge of the site down here. 11 10-foot containers around the middle. There would be a reduction from the current 60 parking spaces down to 21, so that's a loss of 39 spaces. And this cycle store here currently goes right to the site edge, and they're looking to chop maybe 2/3, 3/4 of it off. In terms of the other plans, the top one is what a 20-foot container looks like, and the bottom one is a 10-foot container. In terms of the dimensions, I guess the most important one is the height. So it's about 2.6 meters high. The cycle store I just mentioned, on the left is the existing cycle store, and on the right is what it would look like once modified. And finally, here is a street scene. So at the top is the existing street scene, and below is the proposed street scene. Here is one of the containers, just to give you an idea of how visual that would be from Surrey Close. And you can hardly see the proposed fencing because it would be behind all this planting here. And there's the gate and the other fencing here behind that planting. So talking you through the planning issues, the first one is the principle of development. As explained, this is in the defined development boundary where there is a presumption of development happening. And this is a key employment site as allocated and safeguarded, not allocated, sorry, as safeguarded in the local plan, where this type of use, which is a B8 storage and distribution use, is acceptable. So on those grounds, we're fine with the principle of development. The next issue is the scale, the design and the impacts on local character. So as explained just now, it's quite a varied character. It's a very large site, the Granby. There's plenty of variation in terms of building sizes, means of enclosure, scales, so appearance of buildings, that sort of thing. It's what we would say is unconstrained in planning terms. And by that, I just mean there aren't any listed buildings on site or nearby, no national landscape to consider or heritage coast or conservation areas. So that does give a certain degree of freedom in terms of design. We wouldn't consider that the containers would be visually intrusive, as I just showed on the street scene. Thanks to that planting, that would pretty much foil views into the site. You might see a little bit of a container on top, but bearing in mind this is an industrial estate, we wouldn't consider that to be visually intrusive or harmful. The type of fencing they want to install, it's palisade or similar, is what they've said. They haven't specified, but palisade, here's an example, and I will stress, this is my example that I got from Google. This isn't something they've provided, but this is what a palisade fence looks like. So it's that quite heavy, it can be quite intrusive if used in the wrong context. You will see these around the Granby, but in this particular part of the Granby, you don't. So that's why it's important, we feel, for it to have been set back and screened by planting. With that in mind, we're happy to conclude that the proposal is acceptable in terms of its scale, design and impacts on local character. Moving on to neighbour amenity, it's about 240 metres from the nearest residential property. There are businesses either side of the site, but it's unlikely that workers would be particularly disturbed by comings and goings of vehicles. Bearing in mind, again, this is an industrial estate anyway. Environmental protection were consulted on the application and they've raised no concerns. They haven't even asked for any restrictions on the opening hours. So on that basis, we conclude that it's acceptable from a neighbour amenity perspective. Flood risk and drainage next. There is some surface water on our constraints map around the north of the site and a little bit around the entrance. In flood risk terms, as defined in national policy, this is what you would call a less vulnerable use. And it's unlikely there'll be many people here. It's for storage and distribution rather than any sort of regular daytime people being on the site. It's an existing hard surface anyway, and it would just involve placing containers onto that hard surface. So we don't think there'd be any material difference in drainage terms, and therefore it's acceptable. Moving next to highway impacts, safety, access and parking. So in terms of the policy framework, the local plan, policy COM7, says that development won't be permitted unless it can be demonstrated it would not have a severe detrimental effect on road safety, or measures could be introduced to reasonably mitigate potentially dangerous conditions. In this case, highways have provided a defer comment, and that is on grounds of a lack of information provided by the applicant. So I'll just talk you through each of those points. So the first is that we will go from 60 to 21 parking spaces. And there's an unanswered question in terms of what would happen to those displaced 39 car parking spaces. What if there were queues at the front of the site? Would that lead to delays for people getting in and out of it? How would emergency services get in and out of the site? Are the visibility displays at the front of the site suitable for the types of vehicles that would come and go with a B8 storage and distribution use? And I took this photo a couple of weeks ago just to kind of illustrate some of those points. So this was right outside looking back down Surrey Close. And as you can see, there's hardly a space there to get past. And it is quite difficult if you, even in a family car, a car comes the other way, which did happen to me. You're both forced to stop, possibly squeeze past. And it is quite difficult. And you think, well, what would happen if an HGV came the other way? One of you would have to reverse. Even worse, what if two HGVs met? So that's a key unanswered question. In terms of other concerns from highways, the hours of business weren't defined. It wasn't clear if there'd be a booking system to get in and out to try and help manage the when the business would be operating and how people get to their storage. There were no details of active travel, so walking, wheeling and cycling into the site. Nothing on pedestrians and non-motorised modes of transport and sustainable travel, which we should be looking at. And they submitted what's called a swept path drawing, or rather an incomplete swept path drawing. And I'll show you that in just a moment. And the purpose of a swept path drawing is to show you how a particular vehicle would be able to get in and out and navigate around a site. And this is what they supplied. So normally this is typical of a swept path. So you can see a vehicle here. You can see it's tracking just around there where its wheels would go if it had to maneuver, but it stops right there. So what we don't know is, can it get round here? Can it negotiate this bend without maybe clipping a parked car or hitting a storage container? Can it then get round there, and back out again? We just don't know. What they haven't told us either is what type of vehicle this is supposed to be. We would expect large vehicles with a V8 storage and distribution use, but we don't know what this is supposedly testing. So that's a key bit of information that's missing. So all of these issues were put to the agent, and they provided a rebuttal, which then went back to Highways. And Highways have maintained their stance of, we don't have enough information to look at this favourably. So in terms of the agent's rebuttal, they said things like, not many people would arrive in an HGV. Okay, so that's fine, but they're not ruling out HGVs. They're still saying there may be HGVs, but we don't know how many, we don't know when. They've also suggested that any HGVs could turn in the car park at the end of the industrial park. Quite where they mean is unclear, but I would imagine they're referring to land up here. The only problem with that is they don't own it. So how could they rely on third-party land for their turning space? Plus, that also tells you that maybe they don't believe you can turn within the site anyway, so you would need to rely on third-party land. In terms of blocking up, the loss of parking, they've said that any parking currently taking place is done so informally, but it's unlawful. And they could arrange for the site to be locked if that would make the point. I don't have an answer to that. They do have a lease with Dorset Council, who is ultimately the landowner. I don't know if the lease would allow them to shut off the car park, but let's say they did, you would then lose all 60 parking spaces. So that could make the problem even worse. Again, we just don't know. And then if you think about them shutting the car park, what would happen to the local businesses who do rely on this parking? We have had an objection from one of the businesses about that. So it is a concern. So with all that in mind, Highways still aren't satisfied, and we conclude that it's unacceptable and it's contrary to that policy COM7 I mentioned earlier. Moving on next to ecology. So there are two relevant policies here. The first is of the local plan, and that says where significant harm to nature conservation interest can't be avoided, it should be mitigated. But you can't do that, you need to compensate. In the Chickle neighbourhood plan, there's policy CNP12, which says development should look to protect and, where practicable, enhance biodiversity. This should be done through an understanding of the wildlife interest that may be affected by development and the inclusion of measures to ensure an overall biodiversity gain. And for sites of 0.1 hectare or more, a biodiversity plan will be required. In this instance, the developer has supplied us with no ecological information whatsoever. And this is despite me asking for it several times. The natural environment team are concerned about this. The developer's point of view is that there just wouldn't be any harm at all. But if I take you through these photographs of the site, I'll tell you why I conclude otherwise. So this here is some existing scrub that's clearly overgrown into the site. You're not going to be able to bring this site forward for the proposed use without clearing all that. The next photo, this is the existing cycle shed that they want to reduce in size, and you can see it's very much overgrown. Whilst that's probably weeds in some people's eyes, it's nonetheless habitat. This is the site frontage. So up here, we have the original plan. Again, I want you to disregard this, but I'm just giving it for context. So the original plan showed with the black line here, just underneath their red line, was the line they wanted for their new palisade or similar fence. And when you line that up to what's actually on the ground, you can see here their existing chain link fence on the left, which follows the pavement edge. If I go there, so there's the pavement edge. If I just get the pointer there. So they would be setting this new fence further into that vegetation. And I can't see how they would be able to get a fence through all this without damaging it, trimming it back, or probably removing it. And that was their original plan. So the revised plan, it does show it set further in, but again, are you really going to be able to get your fencing through this particularly dense foliage without damaging it? I very much doubt it. Moving over to the other side of the site and the entrance, again, their original plans, please disregard them, but this is what it showed. So their fencing and their gate would have gone right along the front, probably prejudicing that. Now their revised plans, which I admit I did encourage them to submit, it would show it further in amongst that vegetation, but this was always going to be an issue, I must stress. So because of that, we don't know what the baseline is. We don't know what would be damaged. We don't know what would need to be compensated for. We can't therefore conclude with any certainty that it's acceptable from an ecological point of view. BNG, so this is biodiversity net gain. This applies to all developments that would involve the loss of 25 or more square meters of habitat. Again, this is another point of disagreement between me and the developer. Our position is that through these photographs I've just shown you, I believe that more than 25 square meters would be affected. They believe it wouldn't. But they haven't actually supplied any information to justify that. I have been in discussions with legal about this particular issue and whether or not we could refuse planning permission on those grounds. But we have been advised that B&G is in fact a post-permission issue. So in other words, we would grant planning permission and then a developer would have to come in and discharge a planning condition showing us their B&G. So that means we can't refuse it up front. But if they were to reach a point where they got planning permission, they would have to comply with B&G then. So despite natural environment team's concerns, despite my concerns, we can't refuse planning permission on that basis. So it's not a reason for refusal before you today. So the site is within 5 kilometres of Cheshunt and the Fleet, and there are recreational pressures on that particular SAC. And but that's mainly due to new overnight accommodation. So there's no overnight accommodation proposed with this, and therefore it's acceptable in that regard. So moving on to the conclusions in the planning balance. So what I've explained to you today is that the proposal is contrary to the policies of the development plan. And the job today is to determine the application in accordance with the development plan unless there are any material considerations indicating otherwise. So that allows us to undertake a planning balance to see, are there any advantages, benefits with the proposal that outweigh the harm that's been identified to you. So in this case, there would be an economic gain from the use, from putting the storage containers there and changing the use of the land. But that benefit is somewhat diminished because we don't know how that would affect local businesses who rely on that parking. The application form submitted says that no jobs would be created by this development. Again, I've queried that with the agent, and they maintain that no jobs would be created. So that's not something you're able to take in as a positive in the planning balance. Going against the proposal is the failure to understand or demonstrate highway safety, and that carries significant negative weight. So it's really important to make sure that the roads are safe, and we just don't know. And similarly, the failure to understand the baseline or demonstrate if biodiversity would be harmed, again, that attracts significant negative weight. So overall, we don't feel that the very small gain in economic gain outweighs that level of harm. And therefore, our conclusion, our recommendation is to refuse planning permission on 2 grounds. First is highway safety, and the second is the failure to demonstrate whether biodiversity would be harmed. And the full reasons for refusal are set out in the committee report. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Nice and clear. We do have a speaker online, which is the agent, Matt Annen. Josh? Okay, Matt, would you like to speak so we can check we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks for attending online. You've got 3 minutes. We'll give you a heads up after 2:30. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Hello, members. My name is Matt Annan. I'm a Chartered Town Planner and Director of Pure Town Planning. The Planning Officer has explained the details of the proposed scheme in his opening presentation to you. From the outset, it's important to recognise the principle of this development is acceptable. This is a BH storage use within the Granby estate, a safeguarded key employment site, and officers confirm the proposal is acceptable in principle. This is exactly where a use of this nature ought to be located. Members will also note from the report that the scale, the design, the visual impact, and neighbouring amenity are all acceptable. The site is well separated from residential properties, is already within a working industrial context, and the revised layout and setback fencing significantly reduces the initial concerns. In short, this is an appropriate form of development for this location. The two remaining concerns, highways and ecology, are not matters of inherent harm, but matters of further information. Looking at the highways, Dorset Highways did not object. They asked for further details. I think there's some confusion here. However, the highways teams are treating this as a public car park for the estate. It is not. It is private. My client has a long leasehold on the site, leased from the council, who are the freeholders, hence why this application is before you today. And the existing parking is informal, and he could stop the site by locking it up at any time. Incidentally, just to correct the officer, the applicant does also own the land and buildings to the north, and therefore HGVs can already access those buildings as they have roller shutters and are in light industrial use. The second point of clarification is that this is a low intensity lock up and leave storage. Look at the size of the storage units. Customers will arrive occasionally by car or hired van, load or unload and leave. This type of storage is used for additional household storage, perhaps in house moves or when new businesses outgrow their current storage space. Visits are sporadic, so queuing at the gate is unrealistic. This type of storage would not create the volume of traffic, the size of vehicle. There's not going to be HGVs delivering goods because the containers are smaller than the HGVs. It's just not going to attract that kind of unacceptable safety concerns. But if members are minded to support the scheme, this could be secured by an appropriate worded condition requiring a transport management statement, controls on vehicle size, hours of use, and even a booking system, if necessary, to ensure a safe operation without any adverse impacts on the local network. Similarly, on ecology, this is uncertainty rather than a harm. Weed clearance is routine maintenance, and the applicants could do this at any time. No different to someone weeding a garden. The applicants contend the amount of vegetation would not breach the 25 square metres. The fence would be run along the back of the bike store, not along the middle of the vegetation. But as you've heard, B&G is a post-permission matter in any case. Members, this proposal represents the efficient use of underused land, supports the local economy. It would create employment during the installation stage and with tenant fines and ongoing rentals. And we respectfully hope that members support the scheme. But if you don't, and you're not comfortable securing the information by condition, then we respectfully ask you to defer for additional information to be required. Thank you for your time and listening.
Thank you, Matt. Steve, any comments on the?
I don't really have anything further to add. It just appears that we are differing professional opinions.
Yeah, that's a fair point. There does seem to be some questions still unanswered. Almost no matter who you believe. In fact, you did a good job to present both sides of that one. Members, any questions for the planning officer? Councillor Northern, followed by Councillor.
I used to work in Avon Close, which is opposite Surrey. So, I have been down the road on the odd occasions. It's not from memory, and perhaps somebody else can advise. It's not one of the busiest roads on the industrial estate. The fitness studios at the bottom, that's increased the activity on the road. The Dorset Echo, which is adjacent premises, has its own separate access road, and big lorries come in and out there with the paper. So I see it as a back road on the estate. I note the agent noting it's underused land, and I'd agree with that. And I don't recollect the car park ever being full. It's not a public car park. I'm not sure what the arrangements are. I noticed there's a sign on the entrance saying BMT, which is a company that has offices in that area, or at least used to have offices in that area. Maybe not anymore. I was concerned about the loss of car park spaces. There is a problem on the Granby on car parking.
Sorry, there are technical questions.
Yeah, I was just about
sorry,
to, I was just about to ask that.
So,
Councillor
okay.
O'Leary, I'm thinking we're getting
So my
a
technical
statement.
question, really, thank you, you're right, it is about the swept path work. I don't understand why we haven't persisted in getting more information on the swept path work, because that seemed to be the only material consideration that was relevant for me.
Well, yeah, we did ask, well, we referred highways concerns to the agent, and essentially they came back with it's either not a problem, it could be deferred to a planning condition, and now they're suggesting a transport management statement by a condition. We really need, and perhaps my colleague in highways might want to chip in, but we need to understand the baseline with these things. We need to understand, is it fundamentally going to be okay? And that's why having a swept path up front is so important, because then that tells you with a B8 use, which is what is before us, that then becomes the use of the land. So then these shipping containers could presumably be removed at some point in the future, and that use of the land would stay. And you could then have a different use, which may need bigger vehicles or different vehicles. So it's about future proofing that use of land. So we can't just go on what they've submitted us with that little bit of tracking. We need to understand the whole lot. And is it safe to get in and out? Is the visibility safe getting out of it as well?
Are you happy with that clarification?
I would have thought that a future use would be subject to a future planning application, and we shouldn't account for that. Could you advise on that?
Well, I mean, this is described as putting containers on the site.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah. So, but that would then, the use of the land would then become B8 use.
Yeah. And if somebody put in an application to do something else downstream, then they'd have to put in a separate application and justify the revised access statement.
Or potentially.
Yes.
If the land would have a B8 use, which means the land itself could be used for any kind of storage and distribution use. Obviously, if somebody wanted to come in and erect a building, it required plan permission, but they could just decide they're going to store vehicle parts or something there. Sort of open site without the containers in the future if its plan permission was granted.
Could that be conditioned out? We don't have such a broad B8 use.
It wouldn't normally, no, it would be quite hard to condition it. I mean, we could potentially condition it only be used
for
the siting and storage of storage containers.
Yeah.
If it was considered that was justified on some material planning consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You're happy with the answers you received? Okay. Councillor Isang, you wish to speak?
I did, thank you, Chair. Yes, just two kind of technical questions, one of which I think has just been covered off in relation to the B8 usage. That makes sense to me. The other one, the agent mentioned that the applicant owned or had access to land to the north. And I just wondered whether that would have been covered off in the application in relation to a blue line. Because my understanding is that if an application is submitted, and that should have been included. So I just wanted clarification that I'd understood that correctly, that there would be a red line and a blue line if there was other land, and whether that was the case and whether you were aware of that land situation already. Can I respond?
Yes.
Yeah, you're quite right. Normally, an applicant is required to put any other land in their ownership within a blue line. In this case, there's no blue line on the submitted location plan. So it's the first I've heard that they supposedly own the rest of the land. We don't have access to land registry records, so we can't see any titles. But what we do have is a layer on our GIS that shows us various parcels of land ownership. So I do know that it is in a different ownership from this site, or is it a different title rather? Sorry, just to be to be clear. So it's a different title holding, whatever you call it, for the two parcels of land. So therefore, it wasn't clear to me that the applicant does actually own that piece of land. Certainly take at face value what Mr. Annan has told us, but that's the first I've heard of it. But even if they were to rely on that other piece of land for turning, surely that should be within the red line, or at least the blue line, so that we can then condition it. It's just not.
You see, there seems to be a lot of unanswered questions on this one. It's a shame it's reached this committee, and we don't have those answers already done, especially as the planning officer has tried his best to actually get answers to those questions. I've got a question. I'm just going to pull rank a little bit on this one. Does this car park, Steve, you said the car park was established in 1986. Could you sort of add a little bit more flesh to the bones of that? Because the applicant is saying it's an informal car park and it's their right to close it and do what they want with it. So that's a question in my mind as to what's quite accurately true on there.
Yeah, so just to sort of clarify my wording, it's the planning history, particularly with these older applications, can be a little bit sparse. But I have delved into the old microfiches and I have found that there was a planning in 1986. So that's when the planning permission for the car park was first granted. I don't know if it's built then, or maybe it came at a later date. There was no information, no conditions requiring that car park to be used by any specific business. It was just a car park built under a permission. But I think what's clear is that it is used, albeit underused. I take your point. For the two or three times I've been down there now as part of this application, it's never been full. But it is still nonetheless used by local businesses, as I think proven by the fact one of those local businesses has written in with concerns over this application because of the loss of car parking. Dorset Council owns the land, presumably has some control of the lease arrangements, and whether or not it could actually be shut, I don't know. But I think it is a material consideration that it is used by the local businesses. And if it were to be shut, what would happen to those businesses?
Yeah, I still got a question mark over that after what you said, because there seems to be unanswered questions even now, some ambiguity as well. Any other members wishing to speak on technical? Okay. Yeah, Councillor Essing, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up on the question you just asked, it raised another one in my mind. Just a clarification. Is there a specific usage class for car parks? In relation to B8, obviously would be for storage units. What usage class would car parks come under? And I suppose the thrust of that question and why it's relevant is this defined as a car park from a planning usage perspective at the moment? Because I guess I'm just trying to understand whether it's a private car park or a public car park. That wouldn't necessarily be a planning issue, but it would be a planning issue if we're saying from a planning perspective it is defined as a car park and we're going to define it as something else. That would be definitively removing those spaces. Does that make sense? And can you add some clarity?
It does. I mean, looking back through my reports, paragraph 6.1, it gives the description of development attached to that 1986 permission. And it was described as erect office accommodation with car parking and landscaping. So I don't think a car park in planning terms fits within the use class order. You'd probably call it a sui generis use, i.e. a use of its own. But because of that description of development, it's clearly tied in with the offices. So I would probably say this, you might want to clarify as ancillary to the office use.
Okay, that's a good point. Thank you for that, Neil. Members, are you happy to move to debate now, unless you've got any more questions? It looks like we're going to move to debate. Yes, Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you very much. I work on the Granby. I walk past this road 4 times a week. I drive past about 8 times a week. I know it very well. There's almost no issue with traffic that I've ever seen on it. It's very, very sparsely used, apart from local businesses, which probably use it around a similar time-ish. Never seen any congestion on it. No one lives in anywhere near any of this. And a point on highways, I've been on this committee for 6-7 years. I sometimes wish I'd seen the level of concern around highways on other applications that actually affect people's day-to-day lives I've seen on this. It's going to affect people just going to work and other businesses. I've never seen loss of parking really taken as a serious issue on a planning application either. So I'm not sure why it is on this, especially when it's only work parking, not business-related parking. In regards to the car park, as the agent said, and and from my understanding, from based what I know about the Granby Industrial Estate, he has the right to do what he wants with that land as the leaseholder in regards to usage. He could turn around and start charging permits, I suspect, for people that want to use it. He could tell people he can't use it, which I've seen in other cases. So I don't think loss of parking to a few local businesses is really anything to take into consideration on this. I've never seen a HGV drive up there. You see small transit vans from electricians and other similar businesses go up there now and again. In regards to the ecology, this is an industrial park. It's not Jurassic Park. It's not an environmental area. Like the agent said, he could clearly go in there and remove all those weeds and hedgerows, to my understanding, if he could. There's no trees on there with the TRO, to my understanding, and I've just looked and I couldn't see any notes of anything to do with that. It is scruffy, it is ugly. I'd much rather see something happen on there that's new. Yeah, there might be a lot of parking, but in my opinion, I think this outweighs the regeneration of that area outweighs just leaving it as it is. I understand there's some missing information and that is frustrating. I feel for the officer who's trying to get that information and hasn't been able to. But I just don't see the issue with this personally.
Thank you. Any other member wishing to speak? Councillor Northern.
Could you note what I said earlier, which was in support of that?
Yeah,
because I was obviously at the wrong stage. I agree that it would be good to get better usage out of that land, and I'm a little bit concerned that highways have put their foot down. I noticed assets did not provide a response. I don't know what lease payment is made to Dorset Council, but I'm presuming it would be an increased lease if it were storage units, because it's now receiving more monies than a car park. So to me, there's more information which needs to come forward, and I'd suggest that we might identify the information that's really needed to make a proper decision and defer this. Because the principle of development is well established to my mind. It should be developed and into better use.
Councillor Northern, I think an officer has tried to get the information. If it's not forthcoming, I'm not sure that.
And we set a time scale. If there's nothing comes forward, it's refused.
I don't think we can quite do that. Just bear with that. We'll hold that thought anyway.
Yeah.
Councillor Lux.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I think it's follow on both the previous speakers, and kind of touching on what I mentioned earlier on. It's incredibly frustrating, and I feel for the officer actually is trying to sort of get this information, because ultimately we rely on the experts to provide the information for us to make an informed decision, and ultimately that is also dependent on the applicant providing that information. So when that's not forthcoming, it's incredibly frustrating. Having said that, I also do sort of mirror the comments from Councillor O'Leary in terms of what we're talking about, where it is, and the repurposing would be beneficial. It's just frustrating that we can't base that on what we personally think when that information's lacking. So yeah, I think just to say, I feel your pain, because it's obviously not made your life any easier, and it in turn is not making our life particularly easy either. To which I think that if the information was forthcoming, would actually be a fairly straightforward decision to make. It's just a shame that we got to this point, because it makes it just a lot more work for everyone else. But I do ultimately agree that this would be a good use of better and good use of land, be a benefit to the local area. Wonder if a traffic management plan might actually create some employment, which might be the answer to one of the questions you didn't receive.
I've just had a discussion. Sorry, I'll come back to you in a second. Just had a discussion with Hannah. There is an opportunity to refuse this today if the committee is minded to, on the basis of lack of information, which the applicant can then resubmit with that information. And it may be that would promptly information be forthcoming. Yes, Pete, please.
Chair, Councillor Pete Roper, Portland Ward. Knowing the Granby as I do, and it's true this is a quieter area, part of the Granby estate itself. And my concern was about this possible loss of car parking spaces. I think it's 39 sort of spaces. But having a look at Google Maps, which is only a sort of snapshot in time, and other sort of photographs which have been sort of presented sort of today, it's certainly underused as a car park, and I'm not really sure just how much of an impact a loss of 39 sort of spaces in that area would have on the Granby as a whole. I did notice, Steve, that you did take a picture sort of looking up the road towards the main track through the Granby, and there was cars sort of seemed to be sort of parked all the way up and until the actual entrance itself. So that indicates that for whatever reason it's not it's not being used as a car park. Otherwise, those cars would be off the road and actually in that area itself. So I did come into this sort of being concerned about the loss of car parking spaces, but those concerns really have been allayed a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this one?
So just one, you were referring to it changing its use to B8, but if it's retaining car park, surely it would be a divided use, both car parking and storage units. It's not totally storage units, so I don't think the whole site would change to B8.
It would, Chair, because the car park would just be ancillary to the B8 use.
Steve, could you just pop your recommendation back up on the screen? Members, we've had some debate. We haven't had any proposal yet. I am concerned that if I would like to make a decision based on having all the information. Personally, I still don't feel that all the information is there, which is why I can understand the planning officer's recommendation. So just need to explore what we do next. Is there any proposal coming from the floor anywhere?
I'm happy to propose to defer on the basis of clarifying the swept path, the type of usage that we've made of the site, or any constraints which are prepared to be considered on the usage of the site in terms of size of the units. And if the officers think that some form of higher statement than a swept path, like a transport management, to me it was the swept path access that's important. I don't think transport management is necessarily appropriate, but a better swept path analysis I think would have satisfied you, but let me know if I'm wrong.
Any comments, Steve? I think that this application needs to be determined as submitted, preferably. And if we don't feel that the information that we want is there, then I think I'm tending to fall in line with the planning officer's recommendation, to be honest. But I'll take a proposal from the floor, please.
Sorry, I think you had a.
Oh, sorry, David, did you?
Yes,
We've got a seconder for Councillor Northam's proposal to defer. Councillor Christopher. So we need to vote on that, please.
Should we just?
Sorry.
So was the suggestion that we defer indefinitely to allow, obviously, because we don't.
Yes, we do.
You were talking earlier about potentially having a timescale, and we need to get the list of the information that was missing. So perhaps we could just take a short break and then.
Yes, good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be told.
We'll take a 10-minute recess now, please. If anybody wants to use it as a comfort break, please. you. Right, welcome back, everybody. Put the information up on the screen, please, Anne.
Yeah, if I could just say a few
Oh,
words
yes, of
first,
course,
then
please do.
we'll just show the information. Yeah, so essentially, when we get applications like this, we have 8 weeks to determine the application. And because we have tried to work with the applicant and have asked for the information as explained by Steve and already discussed, the deadline for determining the application has already passed, which means the applicant could potentially appeal non-determination to the planning inspectorate. If they did that, that obviously removes the decision from the council's control because it goes to a planning inspector to be determined based on the evidence at that point in time. The council would still have to defend its position in respect to the appeal, but without the benefit of a decision being made locally. And there is a risk of costs being awarded against the council if it's felt that there's been a delay or perceived unreasonable behaviour, which has led to the need to submit an appeal. We could seek to agree an EOT, an extension of time with the applicant, but there's no guarantee that they will agree to that, and they retain the right to appeal. So essentially, officers' advice to you is that to avoid that risk of the appeal and a potential cost application, we need to establish a clear and defensible position, and the best way to do that is to refuse the application at this stage for the reasons already set out. And as already explained by Hannah earlier, the applicant would then have the right to submit a new application, which could be accompanied or should be accompanied by the information identified already. And that would enable the council to determine the application based on full and thorough assessment with all the correct information in the normal statutory timescales. So our advice to you as members would be to not defer, but to determine the application before you, because that's essentially what we're required to do with the local planning authority. We do have some information about deferment, as that was proposed in front, put to the table. Do you want to share it, Steve? So if members were to vote for a deferment, we said we've listed out the information there to be submitted, which we'll just run through, and submission for that information within 6 weeks, albeit some of it, like the ecological information, could take longer for the applicant to prepare. So we said also a longer period to be agreed with the service manager or area manager for development management. The information required would be ecology information and a biodiversity plan, evidence of sufficient parking for both the existing and proposed parking needs, hours of operation and types and numbers of vehicles. Will there be a booking system? And will there be a car park management plan? Details to be submitted. Will electric gates mean queues on road? Can HGV turn in forward gear? So evidence to do with that. Opportunities for active travel and several access for pedestrians, cycles and internal walkway. Threat path analysis information and drawing. What's the arrangement for emergency access given the electric gates, and details of visibility space.
Thank you very much, Anne, for that one. Comments, please, in light of the officer's advice. Councillor Northam.
I think in light of the officer's advice, I will withdraw my proposal to defer and go with the officer's advice to refuse and put on that basis. I would just comment that if we were going deferring, I wouldn't put ecology information and biodiversity plan at the top of the list of extra needs. It is a car park. It isn't an industrial estate. It's hard surface, most of the area already. It's a minor area. I think you'd have to get out with a measuring stick to judge whether that curtilage around the front is 25 metres or not. So it would be a dodgy one to go forward on, I would think. But that's irrelevant if we're withdrawing my.
To be fair, Councillor Northam, I think the officer's been under pressure for 10 to try
Yeah, I can
come up with
understand
that for 10 minutes. So I think they've done a
think-
excellent job.
Yeah, no, I
Sorry,
agree.
Councillor O'Leary.
There's no information that I require extra that I believe would actually change my mind on this application based on my knowledge of the area. Based on what Councillor Northam just said in regards to biodiversity, I see no loss of biodiversity in this. It's an industrial park, as I've said. And in regards to traffic, I see no evidence before me that there's any serious concerns around traffic based on the sighting of a couple of containers in what is already a car park. And the loss of parking to me is not an issue either. Reasons outlined in the previous statement, the fact that the applicant could just close it off anyway, is my understanding. And also we don't, in general, accept parking loss as a major planning consideration for determining applications. So I won't be voting for refusal.
Okay. Councillor Ising.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have to say, having listened to all the points, and with the greatest respect to Councillor O'Leary, because I always have a lot of time to listening to local views. I think it's really, really important, and clearly Councillor O'Leary knows this site very well, and I understand exactly what he's saying about the points that he makes. However, I fundamentally have issues with the information the council's received on this, and we can only make a decision on the information we have at our disposal today, if we are making a decision today. And I am aware, the applicant can reapply. I sympathise a lot with applicants in planning applications, having put in quite a few myself. They require a lot of investment from applicants, but there's some fairly fundamental things that I feel like we just don't have clarity on. The red line, blue line situation concerns me. And as I understand it, planning applications, there's potential for them to be not valid and not determinable if blue and red lines aren't correct. The usage, the loss of the car park, although it wouldn't necessarily be a practical impact, I think there's still a question mark about the usage of that in my head. So I'd like to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation to refuse. I don't know whether we can put it back up on the screen.
Yes, please, if you could. So Councillor Northam's withdrawn his proposal, so that's fallen. So the proposal we now have on the table is Councillor Ising's, which is to refuse in line with the officer's recommendation. Do we have a seconder for that?
Yeah,
Councillor Kimber has seconded it. So that's the one before us that we'll be voting on shortly, gentlemen and ladies, as soon as we have it on the screen. You lost it, Steve.
It's just coming now.
It's buried, is it? So the lack of information has led to refuse for those two reasons. Are you happy with that one?
I am.
Are you happy with what's on the screen?
Yes,
Kimber. Yeah. Right. Can I ask then? Can all those in favour of the recommendation proposal for Councillor Ising raise your hands? Josh, five. Okay. All those against? 3, 4, 5. Abstentions? None. Which means it's down to the chair's casting vote, and I will go with the recommendation to refuse for the reasons on the screen. It's me. So that's chairman's casting vote. So that application is now determined. Thank you, everybody, for your active part on that one. We now move to agenda item 7. It's been a long time. P/LBC/2025/05844 Lyme Regis Harbour, the Cobb, Lyme Regis, DT7 3JJ. Presented by Eve van der Steen. While you're getting that ready, Eve, Councillor O'Leary has to leave the chamber, and because I think it's another meeting or work to go to. So thank you for your input today.
And Josh.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Chamber.
I don't need to leave, but if we're in danger of leaving, should we consider the order in which we take these applications?
Yeah, we might well need to look at this one. It's only. Yeah, the last two will 8 and 9 will be a single presentation.
So they're together, yeah.
They're together. So after this one, we have to review if we've got going up to past 3 hours anyway. So depending on how long this one lasts, we can take the balance view then. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm aware that Councillor Bell may need to leave at 1 o'clock as well.
1 or 1:30. Just trying to find out what work. 1 or 1:30.
Okay, thank you very much.
On this one.
Yeah, I think it is. I'll have to go as well.
Cool. Said at the beginning. Yeah, just to remind you, the last 2 items have been withdrawn, so they're not active today. That's 10 and 11 have been removed from the agenda. So we have 3 to go. Right, Eve, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is application P/LBC/2025/05844. Repair to void under the cob by filling with marine concrete and repair to damaged and destroyed concrete toe. Erection of temporary counterbalance scaffold and hacky steps. So this listed building consent application has been brought to Planning Committee as the structure to which the application relates is owned by Dorset Council. So the application site is the cob, highlighted in red on these location plans, which is not enormously clear, but to the lower plan shows the outline of the area in red. The structure is grade 1 listed and is located within the Lyme Regis conservation area. Shows an aerial photograph just from Google Earth. The cob is an iconic structure of medieval origins, which encloses the working harbour at Lyme Regis. It also acts as a significant line of defence against coastal erosion and storm damage. It's highly visible from many vantage points around the town and forms a key element of the town's local distinctiveness and historic character. The cob also shelters the harbour, which is a working fishing port. The cob is built of various types of stone, but the outer face to the area which this application relates is of massive squared blocks, thought to date from an 18th or 19th century phase of repairs and rebuilding. Part of the cob to which this application relates is the base of the outer face of the area, locally known as the gin shop turn. This is the curved section of walling below between the high wall and the southern arm, and is highlighted in red on this plan and circled on the photo above. These emergency works seek to repair a section of deep voiding beneath the cob and advanced stage deterioration of the structure's concrete toe. This work involves the infilling of the void with marine concrete and the repair and reinstatement of the failed concrete toe. The proposed repair is suggested as a stopgap repair whilst the larger project known as the Lyme Regis Environmental Improvement Works Phase 5 is designed and goes through the approvals process. This larger project is intended to stabilise the whole of the cob. These photographs show the void. So the photograph on the left is taken from inside the void looking out. Marine concrete is to be pumped into the void from a temporary scaffold over the cob. The scaffold will be weighted down and not affixed to the structure. The hacky steps in the description are also scaffolding-based steps, so not fixed to the structure. Once the void is filled, precast concrete blocks will be placed in front of this area in order to prevent washout of the materials. These will be removed once the repair is complete. The damaged concrete toe will be repaired in situ to match the areas either side of the failed area using wooden formwork and marine concrete. Historic England have been consulted and had no comments to make, deferring detailed consideration of the proposals to the Council's conservation specialists. Lyme Regis Town Council are supportive of this application. So in summary, the infill of this large void beneath the cob will locally stabilise the structure, preventing further washout of the core of the wall. The scale and methodology of these emergency repairs has been clearly justified, and this work will not cause harm to the significance of the listed structure, nor to the character and appearance of the Lyme Regis conservation area. And without these localised repairs, further undermining and scour of the base of the outer wall is possible, which may result in larger scale damage to the structure, thereby increasing the scope of the wider stabilisation project in due course. In conclusion, the proposal would maintain the special architectural and historic interest of this heritage asset and therefore would not result in harm to the significance of the listed structure. The proposal would not result in harm to the special character and local distinctiveness of the Lyme Regis conservation area. In reaching this conclusion, the proposal has been assessed in relation to relevant policies.
So we are therefore looking to grant approval subject to conditions being commencement within 3 years in accordance with the approved plans and in accordance with the approved method statement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Eve. Too bad for your first one. Members, any questions for the planning officer, please? No, I think it's all very clear. Move to debate now. Councillor Bell was just in front of Councillor Monk, so I'll take it in that order. Yes, Mark.
So, thank you very much for the presentation. Very clear, very to the point. Outlines why this is, absolutely vital to a precious site that everyone in Dorset has an attachment to. On the basis of what we've heard, it meets all the policies. It's something that needs doing. I'd just like to propose that we go with the officer recommendation. To approve, yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bell. Councillor Monks.
I need to echo my colleague there and say I'm very happy to second, and hopefully get the work done as soon as possible. But I also am aware that the ward councillor is online, so I've wanted to give her an opportunity to speak unless you're going to knock her down. I know she can't. I know she can't second such a proposal from being online. So
I'm sure we've moved to a stage now where the committee could possibly go to the vote.
Happy to second.
So we've got a proposal from Councillor Bell and seconded by Councillor Craig Monks to go with the officer's recommendation to approve. We'll have a show of hands. All those in favour, please. That is unanimous. So thank you very much. The recommendation is carried. Right, moving on to agenda item 8. Thank you. It is P/FUL/2025/02894. It is Kika Beach Club 52 to 53 L'Esplanade, Weymouth DT4 8DG. It is also very closely linked, obviously, with PLBC, which is agenda item 9, PLBC 2025/02899. I think the presentation will probably cover both of these, but we will vote on them separately just to make members aware. Okay, are you ready?
I think so.
It's always a difficult bit. Okay, Robert, over to you when you're ready. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeremy. As you mentioned, my presentation covers both the full and the listed building applications at 52, 53 the Esplanade, also known as the Kika Beach Club, which proposed to retain the canopies and associated works to the frontage of the Kika Beach Club for the use of the business premises. The application has been brought to committee as it covers highway land, which is vested with Dorset Council. Go to the next slide. There we go. So, as shown on the plan here with the star, the application site is located at the southern end of and fronting onto the Esplanade on Weymouth's historic seafront. The application site comprises of the 2 existing mid-terrace Grade 2 listed buildings and a section of highway at the front, section of highway pavement, I should say. The existing buildings are in use as the Kika Beach Club, which is a drinking establishment and restaurant, and that use extends outside the building with this outdoor seating area that covers the section of pavement. The site's in the defined development boundary. It's in Weymouth Town Centre Conservation Area. It's within this setting of adjoining listed Grade 2 listed buildings, which form a group known as the York Buildings. So here we have a plan view of the external area, which shows the external seating, which is has a boundary of timber clad and metal frame wall
that ranges in height from approximately 2 meters to 1 meter, with a circular shaped open frame for pedestrian access to the premises, which is located towards the front of number 53, the Esplanade. The outdoor seating area has a fixed polycarbonate canopy in the centre of the buildings, and sort of flanking that either side are 2 fixed canopy structures with retractable canopies. Canopy frames are painted white in colour, and they are fixed to the listed buildings. You can just see the enclosed area with benches and seats and paraphernalia. There's the north elevation. You can see the sort of circular entrance feature. I'll just point out it shows this kind of star-shaped arrangement there. That, although that's on the plans, that has currently been removed. You'll see that in some later photographs. And you can see the timber sort of walling varies in heights and is sort of irregular shape. Then we've got retractable canopies either side with a polycarbonate fixed in the middle. Here we have the side elevations, which show it's a mono-pitched structure, the canopy. And then moving on to some street views. So this is a street view of the site taken in April last year. We can see the frames there with the canopies retracted at this point, and then the fixed polycarbonate there, and then the sort of timber and metal frame walling around the outside.
Sorry, could you clarify? There are 2 buildings with Kiko written on it.
So it's, yeah, this one here.
Which I'm trying to work out where he's pointing.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's fair enough.
So
you can ask,
because
question him later.
I wasn't quite sure you were pointing at, because Kiko is clearly identified there.
Okay, point taken. Sorry.
Yeah, just to confirm, then I'll show it with my marker. Hopefully, you can see that. It's this structure on the left-hand side of the image. Here I've got another street view image a bit closer up. You can see this star effect, starburst effect, if you like, structure. Again, taken in April last year. And then moving on is a street view image from December 2025 with the canopies extended out, and then you've got these sort of infill plastic glazing, if you like. And I think it just shows there that the ground floor of the buildings are virtually totally obscured by that. And I think just it might be useful to show this image, which is from Street View from October 2009. It shows the buildings on the ground floor prior to the development. So this is what it would have looked like previously. Let's move on to the key planning issues. The site is within the defined development boundary, and the proposed use would serve the existing business premises, so the principle of development is acceptable. In regard to design, the impact on the character of the area is a very non-traditional design, and it's considered to be out of keeping with the heritage character of the site and the area. And it's considered to fail to positively preserve or enhance the what is the unique Georgian architectural characteristics of the Esplanade. So in design terms, it's unacceptable. As far as amenity, given the town centre location, the use of the existing premises as a restaurant, etc., for nighttime entertainment, and the absence of nearby residents, it's considered acceptable in amenity impact terms. So moving on to heritage impacts, the introduction of this non-traditional canopies and structures is considered to be out of keeping with the defining characteristics of the conservation area. And the resulting harm from that is considered to be a significant level of less than substantial harm to the significance of the conservation area. The development obscures the entire ground floor frontage of the listed buildings, creating visual clutter, that adversely alters disrupts and erodes the setting of the listed buildings. Members' attention is drawn to the following extract of the list description for number 52, which states that the building is a very handsome property, little altered externally on its principal front. The proposal is considered to disrupt and obscure these views of the front of the building, and as such diminishes the visual integrity of the listed building and thereby significantly diminishes the heritage significance. The proposed development therefore significantly and uncharacteristically alters the setting of the Grade 2 listed buildings, and it's considered to have a significant level of less than substantial harm to the listed buildings. And then considering the setting of the other listed structures either side, again, it interrupts and obscures those views, and as such considered to have less than substantial harm to the setting of other listed buildings. The applicant has not provided any clear or convincing justification for the heritage harm. Then moving on to public benefits. There are public benefits to the proposed development. Those considered to be in the form of supporting the existing business and the jobs and taxes and contributions to the economy that provides. However, the public benefits from the outdoor seating area could be achieved through movable or temporary seating. And overall, public benefits are considered to be slight. Therefore, been concluded that in heritage terms, the proposal is unacceptable given the significant less than substantial harm to the heritage assets, not outweighed by public benefits or with clear and convincing justification. Moving on, flood risk is considered acceptable. Economic benefits considered acceptable. Highways and environmental impacts are also considered acceptable. So in conclusion, for the full application, the recommendation is to refuse permission for the reasons on the screen, which primarily are on design and heritage grounds. And then in regard to the listed building consent application, I've outlined already the heritage harm, so I won't repeat myself. It's basically the same. And the recommendation for the listed building consent application is to refuse consent given the heritage harm. For the full details there on the screen. Thank you, Chair. That's been my presentation.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much, Rob. Could you just make sure we separate these out with the first recommendation being on there, and then we'll switch to the other one when we come to vote on that one. That's okay. Members, any questions for the planning officer? Councillor Northern.
Thank you. David Northern, Upwell Broadway. I don't remember ECA, but I remember all the things that it's been before. My question is, this is an existing structure, it's there. How did it get there already? When was it approved and by whom? And when did it actually start as a structure? How come are we looking at this now?
I think that's easy to explain.
Yeah. So it was we estimate it's sort of 4 maybe, but it's evolved. It's an evolved structure, I think. Let's say, and probably in the last 4 to 5 years potentially, it's been evolved. There's no approval or no one's given authority for that from a planning perspective that we're aware of. So.
Can I just question that? Because I remember a whole string of applications coming forward for outside usage, and these applications came forward to both the Town Council way back and Dorset Council, and both sides agreed them.
That may have been in respect of sitting out licenses.
Sitting out licenses, exactly.
Yeah, but that's a separate matter to the planning permission that is required for change of use of the land for the sitting out area and the erection of the structure.
So why didn't Dorset Council raise that at that time? You can't surely grant a sitting out license that is establish this string of sitting out areas, because it isn't just one, and then come back 4 years later and say, oh, you haven't got planning permission.
Yes, yes, Anna.
Yeah. So the sitting out licenses, they cover the tables and chairs, things that can be taken off of the highway at the end of the day. And obviously there will be conditions within that license if the highway is being maintained, etc. So that is only tables and chairs that those businesses would be permitted if they have that license. What we're looking at now, and as the planning officer has said, is that perhaps with those areas being well liked and successful, businesses have been now developing permanent structures or more substantial structures around the area, which are effectively changing the use from highway. And obviously we've got some operational development. So that's what we're looking at today. So yeah, it is a retrospective application as such. And it is there, but they have gone far beyond what would be permitted under a sitting out license.
So I'm still confused because I remember there was debate about where the boundary was of such sitting out licenses, and it was defined by the edge of the enclosing area. So it was never just tables and chairs, it always included some screening because it's quite windy there on certain days.
Yes, this screening you're allowed is sort of the heavy metal, things, and you have the little banner that comes between them. So you're allowed that to set out your area, but it wouldn't be this, obviously, the planter, the wooden structures to mark your boundary.
Any other comments, members? I think what we've actually what's progressed it to, yeah, that's something, is the fact that there's a permanent structure fitted to the building without permission, and it's also fitted without permission, and technically it's caused damage to the front of that building.
Is it?
So,
can I ask? Sorry.
Yeah. There's other people. Yes.
Would it be possible to have the photograph?
Yes, sure.
Any particular one?
Yeah. Sorry, what you're going to hear now are the words of a boring old accountant. And I go back to what the legal officer said, and it's the difference in what you actually see in front of a building. If there were merely the tables and the chairs and any dividers that could be moved, that is items with which the business is conducted.
Thank you, Councillor Christopher. Question.
Okay.
This is questions for the planning officer.
Is because if you have screening, etc., you end up with a situation within which a structure,
Is there a question for the planning officer, Simon?
Is conducted? Yes, because the point I would make is it's a fundamental change to the appearance of the building, and that is why I would recommend refusal.
This is a technical question for the planning officer, and you haven't asked a question. You made a statement.
Well,
so
the question for the planning officer is: do I have that correct? Because what I'm seeing in front of me constitutes development. It constitutes a structure. Do I have that correct?
Yes, you do.
Yeah. We agree with you, actually.
Thank you.
We're not arguing, but please confine it to. Are there any more technical questions for the planning officer? If not, I'll move to debate.
Just a follow-up, which is, as you can see from that picture, this is one of.
Is this a question?
The question is it Dorset Council's intention to address this concern across all such establishments in Weymouth? Because that's quite a significant.
Councillor Northern, we're dealing with one particular application from one premises here, so you can hold that in your mind for whenever you want. You can ask it outside this chamber. At the moment, that isn't a question for the planning officer. Any more questions for the planning officer? No. In that case, sorry, Councillor Monks. But
no, I've got no questions.
You can understand. I'm getting slightly frustrated that some of these questions aren't quite.
Councillor
Monks, would you?
No. I'm enjoying the debate.
Okay. In that case, we will move to debate. Who would like to speak first? Have you, have I
I'm
frightened you
happy
all
to
off?
continue the tradition. Speaking first.
Yeah, no repetition.
So it's David North up in Broadway. It is a concern, and we raised concerns when these first came up about how it intruded onto the pavement, and they weren't all equal in sticking outness, and whether you could still get a pushchair and all the rest around the seafront. But all that got approved in the sitting out licenses, as far as we were concerned. And so this is well established. I really worry that Weymouth Town Council have responded and said they have no objection. The Civic Society have responded and said they have objection. I'm not too surprised by that. The one is looking after the heritage as its prime and only concern. The other is concerned about the economic position in the town. And I would say that the establishment of these has been a very popular feature from particularly the businesses, but also from the people using the businesses and sitting out and using these facilities. And if you've ever sat out on a rainy day, you appreciate some of the coverage. And on a windy day, you appreciate the plastic windows, as I think you referred to them. They are beneficial. So whilst I recognise the technical position, I'm not sure it's the right decision to refuse this application.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Northam. Anybody else like to comment on this one? Councillor Bell?
I don't know how to phrase this. I have experience of the seafront area. It's a very vibrant part of Weymouth, very large chunk of the year. These obviously stretch over a large section, and indeed this development is over quite a large section. I am very torn between heart and brain on this one. It is well used. It does support the local economy, and I know that was acknowledged in the report. Absolutely. Damage to the building was mentioned. Obviously, that's regrettable because these are a big historic part of our town. So that way I was using that to prompt my thoughts. I feel very torn because this has added to the local economy. It has been used by a large amount of the public across a wide demographic. I'd anecdotally add. But we obviously have the clear advice of the officer about the heritage of the seafront. I don't know how I'm going to go on this one at this point, but it is worth noting the town council has not just given a no objection, they've supported it on the grounds of economic benefit. So just a slight addition to what Councillor Northam said there. The Civic Society do a lot of great work in supporting Weymouth and making sure it remains the sort of proud historical town that it is. So we've got those two conflicting views locally, and this is one of these where it is genuinely hard as a local councillor and a local resident to know which way to go on this one. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the debate, and particularly, to be honest, to hear from people that aren't necessarily from Weymouth and have that view on it, because I've got to control how I respond to this situation. So
I do understand. I will just,
it was a recommendation.
I'll just pop my comments in. I was struck by the fact that this isn't stopping people sitting outside. It's the structure that's the issue. And I think the comment from the planning officer just said that there isn't anything that could be replaced by tables and chairs and umbrellas. What this isn't done. So that struck a chord with me. I'm not from Weymouth, even though I do go to Weymouth.
Yeah.
And I also do feel that personally that it does spoil the look of those buildings quite dramatically.
Agree with that.
I'll go to Councillor Monks, and I think Mr. Collins wants to speak as well. Councillor Monks, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just again following on from my colleague. I think we're going to be broadly in the same place, but I do have sympathy with the businesses because there is the two extremes of this application, in the sense that obviously we want to protect the local economy for Weymouth. It's a pretty tough time, in particular for these sorts of businesses, and that's very much at the forefront of my mind. But I'm also very keen to protect and preserve our listed buildings. And if there at some point in the past, I know Councillor Northam alluded to it, that we've gone kind of like a blurring of the lines or kind of overstepping from what may have been agreed to before, before to where we are now with something that, as Councillor Christopher pointed out, is not just umbrellas and chairs. It is a very difficult one because ultimately the report is fairly clear where we are. I guess that if we were minded to follow the officer's recommendations, I just wonder kind of how strict we might be with enforcing the conditions and whether we could try and engage in quite a positive and proactive way with the businesses. So there's a bit more of a transition rather than should we agree with the officer's recommendations today that bulldozers don't roll in on Mondays or tear things down. I think we follow the officer's recommendations, but do it in a way that we actually try to support those businesses. And I know maybe it's not ready for this place. And I know you're letting me go because I think you might agree with me, Chair. But yeah, I think there's a way we can maybe reach a decision, but also look to support these businesses that will be affected. Because I don't have as much of an experience as my colleague with the Weymouth Pavilion down there, but I'd like to expand my knowledge. So we want to see these businesses close.
Okay, I'm going to move to Officer Collins, and then afterwards you have to note the time. We're getting close to 1, so I'm going to have to take a vote on, just in case you want to talk a bit longer, go past 1 o'clock. So we'll do that in just a second. Officer Collins, please.
Chair. Yeah, I mean, I just really want to emphasise these are grade 2 listed buildings that these are in front of. We're in the heart of the Weymouth Town Centre Conservation Area on the historic Georgian Esplanade. It's not always officers feel that passionately sometimes about things. I think this is one where as officers, we really do feel, there is significant harm here. Rob just put the photo of what it was like before that was erected. And you can see, the character is completely different. You can see that historic character. And the issue here is as in this photo of what it was like back in 2009, they can have tables and chairs set outside under the terms of their sitting out licence. It's this creep of these structures. So I hear, we've acknowledged obviously the economic benefits, but actually the economic benefits to an extent are limited because they can have a sitting out area anyway. It just needs to be removable. And, part of the key charm and character of Weymouth is that historic Esplanade character. The Weymouth Neighbourhood Plan is very clear in policy W45 about impact on listed buildings and that there should be no adverse impact. I mean, the MPPF is a little bit more flexible in terms of saying less than substantial harm might be acceptable if outweighed by public benefits. But I think members do really have to have regard to those considerations. I hear what you're saying in terms of enforcement, Councillor Monks. Thank you, Chair. These applications actually came in, I think, before summer 2025 from memory, and we have actually tried to engage with the agent about talking through some kind of negotiated scheme, some kind of amended scheme. They've not taken up our offer on that. We do offer, obviously, a pre-application advice service. So if there's refused today, they can engage with us through that service to see if there can be some kind of negotiation over something that's a bit more than just removable tables and chairs, but is more appropriate to the character of the area. So I do hear what you're saying, because we've tried to engage, and we are willing to engage and have that kind of properly informed dialogue with them.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Anne. Before we go any further, I've got Councillor Icelank next, and I think Councillor Kimber, and then we'll look at you three gentlemen over there. It's getting close to 1 o'clock. Can we vote on whether you wish to extend the meeting past 1 o'clock? We're almost there, but I'd hate to go into 1 hour.
Happy.
Minutes over. Happy. So all those in favour of extending the meeting past? Yep. Okay. Yeah, that's unanimous then. Thank you very much. Councillor Icelank.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually wanting to follow up my colleague Councillor Bell's point that he would be interested to hear from councillors that aren't from the Weymouth area. For the second time today, I find myself speaking on something that's not in an area that I do know Weymouth, but it's not an area that I frequent on as frequent a basis as perhaps the Bell. But I really echoing Officer Collins' point, looking at what's there, it obviously businesses like this, yes, it is a difficult time for them. Economic harm has to be in our mind when we take a decision, but I'm looking at what's been constructed, and it's constructed, it's not removable. And I would have thought with some inventive thinking about how to design canopies and how to design barriers around a seating area that could all be removable, it would be perfectly possible to have an outside seating area that was reasonably warm, reasonably comfortable, reasonably well protected from the elements, and not necessitate physical damage to grade 2 listed buildings, and what is actually one of Weymouth's biggest assets. And I do know Weymouth well enough to say it is a spectacular seafront, and it is well worthy of conservation area status. And what I'm looking at is not removable as it stands at the moment. So I'd like to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation, and I don't know if you want to put it up on the Zoom, but to basically refuse permission for the canopies. So.
Councillor Kimber. Sorry, I'm going to work my way around the table here.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Kimber was next.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Paul Kimber, Portland. I recognise exactly what you've said. More, I was going to say, more or less the same area. That this is the Esplanade is a beautiful area, and it is up to us at the end of the day to make sure Pottery prefers, and it's just, as it says, enhance the Georgian architecture characters. So yeah, in seconding it, I'm fully aware and fully understand, if you like, those two forces of a business trying keeping going and the preservation of our Esplanade. So yeah, at the end of the day, we've got to come down on the side of the preservation. Thank you.
Okay, so I've proposed one second there to refuse permission in line with the officer's recommendation. I think 3 hands went up over there, and I didn't get the order they went up in. So I ask you to be gentlemen and decide amongst yourselves.
Can I tidy up my earlier comment?
Yes, please do. Councillor Bell first, then Councillor Roper, then Councillor Christopher. We'll work my way that way.
So just say that was exactly the discussion I needed to hear. And it's been quite reassuring to hear that we are not bringing, I know it was previously explained as well, but that reassurance that we're not ending outside seating on the seafront, we're not ending that part of the economy. There will be various views on this in Weymouth amongst the public and amongst the businesses. But I am reassured that, again, with the officer decision makes sense. There's still that little bit of something in the background where I'm thinking, oh no, but absolutely, we've got to preserve the town.
Be brave.
I'm reassured, and I'm reassured that there are other ways the businesses can achieve the economic benefit. So for that reason, I'll be supporting the refusal. It's just been proposed in seconds.
Thank you. Councillor Roper.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Pete Roper, Portland's ward. Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite striking with the pictures that we have of that particular area. What it looked like. It was 2009, was it? Before all this temporary structures went up, and also just recently on a nice sunny day, but with the structure there on kind of is out, and you can see, when the canopy is out, especially, you can see, the magnificent sort of house, building, Georgian building. Just sort of reflected, to anyone looking at it, and then you see the bottom third, and you can see absolutely nothing. The entrances and that are hidden. I take the point of consultees like such Weymouth Town Council saying that they confirm the economic instances of this application, but the thing about the outside area is that it will be sort of retained with seating and also sort of tables, so that if people want to sit outside in the winter with a coat on, and they can still do that. Personally, I'll go indoors and sit down and have a drink. But we do need to to save these the Georgian architecture in the Weymouth area, and so for that matter, basically, I will be supporting the proposal to reviews the application.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Christopher.
Councillor Simon Christopher, Marshall Vale Ward. It was very interesting hearing the words of the officer, Mrs. Collins, when she pointed out that the building was of great character and charm. And that is the case with Weymouth as well. And that particular modern structure does not add to character and charm. And these things are terribly important. Years ago, there was a chairman who had the casting vote to preserve the cast iron railings in Lyme Regis. His name was Fred. When they were going to be repaired or replaced by aluminium. And it's very important we keep the character that exists within the towns that generate so much for the economy.
There was a hand that went up over here, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor David Shortell, West Morsland, three-legged cross. Miles away on the other side of the county. Yes, I was just going to agree exactly what's been said about keeping the heritage of Weymouth, because that's the important thing, not to the views of the structures that we've just seen on the screen. And I was just going to say that I was going to support views of this particular application.
Thank you very much, David. First time we've heard from you today.
Well, I did say hello when I came in.
Well, that was commendable of you. Right, I think we've got a proposal.
Sorry, could I come back? You allowed Councillor Bell to come back.
Oh, he's poured that one on you there, Chair.
Already. Come on, Councillor, we'll allow you. I'm not quite sure why you need to, but by all means, if you feel the need.
The Weymouth regeneration plan is being revisited. The supplementary planning document, which is being rewritten, which will look across the whole of Weymouth. And Weymouth isn't all Georgian. It's got quite a lot of Victorian. In fact, it's also got a lot of modern. So just down the road from here, you've got a Marks and Spencer's and a Barclays Bank and various other things. So the contiguous part of the seafront is separate to what this is. So that doesn't alter the fact that we need to look at conserving the character. And that's why it's in the Weymouth Neighbourhood Plan, the character of Weymouth as a whole. And the individual buildings, if there's been an offence committed by putting a structure on to this building, then that should have been picked up by enforcement. I'd like to see more enforcement of the protection of buildings in Weymouth. This is all retrospective. So I'm really encouraged by what's been said by Councillor Isaac about looking to alternate solutions, better design guidance. And I'd really like us, as part of that planning document, sorry, that regeneration document, to be providing such design guidance for the future. Because what's happened is in the absence of guidance, and it's just been a bit of a free-for-all. And there's a whole variety of peculiar structures that have grown up that are out of keeping.
I think
I'd like to see us do
take
better.
this. We could take this elsewhere. I think.
Yeah,
It's
we
not,
need
it's
to do
not
better.
finished.
Mike.
I think. Would you like to comment on the fact that about enforcement, etc.? Because the problem is, David, these things have sort of crept in without permission, and now we're being asked to look at it. Is it acceptable or not? And if the answer is yes, then great. And if the answer is no, then fine. We'll have to look at the enforcement issue outside of this. There will be more. I've walked down there myself and had a look recently. There's more that have got this on, but it's not a subject for today. It's just this particular application as it stands. So can I move to the vote, please?
Of the harbour side.
I'll take that on board. All those in favour of the proposal to agree with the planning officer to refuse, raise your hands.
No choice.
And that is unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. We did get there in the end, and I think it's not even 1 o'clock yet. So as we said, the items 10 and 11 have been withdrawn, so they don't count. Urgent items Oh, sorry, listed buildings. You're right, I did say we do them separately. Would you like to vote also on the propose and second to refuse the other one?
Yeah.
It's been such a long discussion, I forgot.
What's different about the other one?
Not a lot.
So one
One's
is
listed building
planning
consent and one was
Listed
all
building
planning.
consent.
Do you want me to separately?
Yes, please.
propose,
Yeah, you've got to do it
that
separately.
we accept the officer's recommendation on this listed building consent in accordance with what's up on the screen.
Yes, it was a long discussion, that one. I'll second that one.
Thank you.
Anybody wish to talk on it? No? Okay, all those in favour of refusal of listed building consent, raise your hands. Everyone's unanimous. Right. Almost there. I will now move to item 12. Urgent items, there aren't any. Exempt business, there isn't any exempt business. So thank you very much for your contribution.